Grace from the International Otter Survival Fund. Thank you so much for coming on this quick call with us. We just want to know a little bit about your role in the organization and what it is it does, the organization.
Well, I'm officially the director of International Otter Survival Fund, and we set it up in 1993 to focus more attention on otters worldwide and help otters worldwide. I mean, a lot of people don't realize there's 13 species. In Europe, we just have the one, so that makes identification quite easy. But in places like Asia, they've got 4 species, and it's quite difficult for them to tell the difference if you just get a glimpse of a brown animal going across. A lot of the time, I think the biggest problem with otters is lack of awareness, because in places like Asia, they regard them as little mammals, which for us particularly in the UK, they're not. They're one of our bigger ones. But so then they're overlooked by things like tigers, elephants, rhinos, and all, which all have their problems, but then otters are just overlooked. So the aim of our fund is to make people more aware of otters, the problems they're facing, and raise funds to help projects in countries where it's hard to raise money. I mean, we don't tend to put money into the better off countries like Western Europe and West America, the Americas, or North America, because a little bit of money will go a long way in somewhere like Nepal, but the same amount won't do it a lot otherwise. And there are a lot of really positive people in Asia that want to get going, and that little bit of a push will just help them to get going properly. Day to day, my role is quite varied. I'm involved in the rehab side because we run our own otter rehabilitation centre here, so I can be hands-on with that. That side varies as well because, I mean, when they're very small, it's more intensive because you possibly have to feed them every 2 to 3 hours. But we're quite hands-off because they stay with their mothers for a year to 15 months. And if you're handling them or having human contact with them all that time, you cannot release them because they'll be tame. So we keep it to just 2 or 3 people just doing it and nobody else. And that way they can get used to us. But if anybody else goes near, they just hide. And that's what we want, an animal that can go back to the wild. So they start off maybe on a bottle, and then they'll go on to pieces of fish. And once they're feeding themselves, we sort of just feed them, check them, see the bedding and all this sort of stuff. And that's it, leave them to it. Another thing that IOSF is very involved in is education. Ben runs our Team Otter program, which is for children. And it's focusing on otters as a symbol for the environment, so that they don't necessarily do otter work all the time, but they'll do things like cleaning the beach of litter and focusing on other species as well, because everything's all connected anyway. It's just that because of what we do it with otters as an ambassador. And they're really good for that because they're top of the food chain. They use the water, they use the land. And so both habitats have to be good condition. I mean, there aren't many species like that. So that's education. We do training workshops to get more people involved in otter work, because we believe that it's not much point going to, say, back to Nepal, and say, right, this is how you have to do it, because we don't know the culture, we don't know the way what will work in these countries. So the way we do it is we sort of go over, train them in fundamentals like survey work, a bit of information on education, but these things have to be adapted to their own use because, they know what will work and what won't. So we have training workshops. The last one was in Malaysia last April. And then it trains the local people, then they go out and they do the work, which is far more effective. What else do we do? Campaigns against fur trade and the pet trade for otters, because those are really big. People don't realise how much of a trade there is in otters. Their fur is really, really dense, because because they're in the water and on land, they can't have a fat layer like a seal, so they won't be able to move fast. So their fur is the important side. So they have an outer fur, which is like a waterproof jacket, and an inner fur, which is like the thermal jacket. And they have to keep them all really good condition. So this means that the inner fur of a Eurasian otter, which is what we have, is about 50,000 hairs per square centimetre. So that means that they're really popular for furs, and it really drives the fur trade. But now we're also finding that the pet trade is getting bigger. People like cute little otters. They look gorgeous, and that's very nice, and we'll have one. And it's just hammering the wild population in Asia, because it's often the Asian small-clawed, which is the one you see in zoos. And they're not easy to look after. And most of the cubs are taken from the wild. They kill the female, take the cubs. And then that just, if you can't look after it, go and get another one. And that just drives the trade on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And in Japan, they have otter cafes. And again, they see them and they're all lovely and cute. I want one, and off we go again. So my role generally is sort of fingers in every pie, basically. The one thing I don't do much of is fundraising. Paul does that. So I suppose that's more their line. Paul is also more scientific. He does the research side, and Ben does the education. So that's about it in a nutshell.
We were talking to another lady last week. It was a non-profit organization that was really focused on communicating towards the UE, the parliament, and making changes that way on like a political level.
Mm-hmm.
And she was telling us, we had a similar kind of interview. She was telling us that that the UE is actually very close to a European fur ban, like a total fur ban.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think a good step. And what you were saying, I never realized that otters were traded for their furs so much.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of sense how you explain it.
Yeah, this is it. People don't realise.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting what you say about the fur ban, because California's just banned it. They don't actually. You see, that's the other thing in US and Canada. They trap for otters legally. The other fur in Asia, and that it's largely, if you're a poor fisherman and this little rat of an otter comes in and rips your nets and all this sort of stuff, it's a big loss to a small fisherman trying to look after his family. And although obviously you don't agree with it, but you can understand why he wants to get rid of the otter. And so he gets rid of it. He gets more money for the skin, or even as the pet, than he would in hours and perhaps months of working. So you can understand what's driving it. But in America, they're trapping literally tens of thousands of otters a year, and people don't understand it. And if you look at the red list for otters, all 13 species are on it. They're all declining except for the North American river otter. And when you try and find out numbers, they haven't got any. So they say it's sustainable. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're going to say something sustainable, you know how many are being trapped, but you don't know how many you've got. So you can't say it's sustainable. And we've argued this time and time again, and people say, oh, but there are lots of them. Lots is not quantifiable. If you go into a shop and they've got loads of apples, you can buy loads of apples, fine. But they've got to know, well, we've got 200 apples. Someone's just taken 150. We need to order more. You've got to have the data, and they just will not supply it. So they can't say that the North American river otter is not officially declining. It's supposed to be stable, but they've got no data for that.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, that I was just going to say that I think going through your website, your organization has a lot of articles on education, and I see a lot of focus on education. Is there a way you spread that knowledge? I know you have the trainings for like the example you said of in Nepal or something, but for instance, with the otters that are being kept as pets, on YouTube, you see so many videos of cute otters that are pet otters. Is there a sort of campaign that you've done in the past that focuses on why you cannot keep an otter as a pet. Is that something that's a priority for you guys, or not really?
It is a priority. It's something we're working on constantly, sort of trying to get more people involved. And there are quite a few people we know who are pushing for, not to take pet otters. But then you get these, like you said, these videos of these cute little otters, and you think, oh, and people like it and say, this is lovely, I want one. And you think, no, you don't want one. For one thing, they're smelly and they're bitey. And, the Japanese cafes, they're there and they're stroked constantly and played with. And you think if you've got a cat or a dog and you want to sit and stroke it all day, it's going to get fed up. And that's an animal that's domesticated and used to human contact. These animals aren't. And otters are also used in circuses. This is something else we're trying to get out to people. You see these otters, oh, they're very cute. They're on the hind legs carrying a ball, pushing a, wheelie chair. Very cute. But it's not their natural behavior, and they should be in the wild doing what they should be doing. I think the pet otters and circus otters and the cafes, this is all linked, and it's something we're constantly working on, and it's creating more awareness. We have World Otter Day, which is the last Wednesday in May every year, and we get people all over the world to do awareness, fundraising if they can, but it's getting the word out to people, about otters, the importance to the environment. And the more you do it, you do start to have an impact. I mean, we had a workshop in Tanzania when was it, 2015. And when we have these workshops, we don't expect every single participant to go out and immediately start working on otters. Some of them will carry on with their jobs, but will sort of do a bit more otter work as part of it, which is great. I mean, and one of the guys who came to Tanzania, he's from Tanzania, and he's doing a brilliant job. He's spoken to, I can't remember how thousands of children, literally, goes to schools. He speaks to fishermen. He's got some of the fishermen to take out otter traps because the otters are taking their fish, so they put a trap to kill it. And he's done a video because in Tanzania, one of the folklore is that the otter has a root in its mouth, and that helps it to catch fish. And so the fishermen will kill it to try and find the root. And, I mean, this is something that we don't obviously believe in, but they do. But he's done a video in Swahili to show to the local people. Now, this is what I mean about using local people. We go and say, oh, we mustn't do that. They're not going to take blinders but notice. And I don't blame him, to be honest. But he goes in, he's a local guy, he speaks their language, he's Maasai, so he knows what he's talking about, and they will listen to him.
Yeah.
So I think that's important.
Yeah. It's quite interesting already. I was just thinking about it, that we all know it's an image problem with the otters. So we all know, when I think of gorillas, tigers, elephants, all those beautiful animals that we all know, every single human on the planet knows they're endangered and there's certain problems that these species have. That's just the image that we have of these animals, and very few people, and I was one of them until now, hopefully, but we don't have that image with an otter.
No,
so we don't connect otters to certain problems, to the animal trading, and yeah.
I mean, pollution is obviously a big problem. I mean, in the UK, it was 2018, I think it was, they put out a report saying English rivers are not fit to swim in for humans. Now, if it's not fit for us to dip in and dip out, what's it like for all the biodiversity of the rivers? Now, I think it's the last couple of weeks, they've come out they said they were going to clean the waterways by 2027. This was an agreement with the EU, but of course that doesn't come into it anymore. And they said they're having to put it back from 2027 to 2063. Exactly. I mean, most of us who know anything about it will be dead by then. That's probably part of the idea. Well, they'll all have forgotten they're dead, or, not able to do anything.
Yeah.
And this, you seem like you know so much, and I just wonder, do Do you have like a social media team? Do you have a marketing team? Like
Yeah, we
all
do.
this information, how often do you put it out, and is it easy to connect with an audience?
We do have social media. We have put out a monthly update to people who sign up. So you can sign up on our website. Anybody can do that. And then we put out a weekly MailChimp to these people. And then we put out regular, I don't do that side either, social media stuff on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And, people can pick that up. And it's all about, again, this is where getting people to share the information. You can put stuff out and we can reach certain people, but if each one of those reaches two more, the impact becomes huge. Last World Otter Day, we had, how many was it, 39 or 40 countries taking part, which worked out at a fifth of the world countries, which is quite a lot when you think about it. That all those countries are taking part. And even countries that don't have otters. There are no otters in Australasia or in Antarctica, but Australia are really fond of them. I suppose it's like we're fond of koalas. You haven't got it, so you like it.
Sorry, on the events topic, you mentioned in the email that you have a 30th anniversary coming up.
Yep. We were founded in 16th November 93.
And so, what are you planning on doing?
Well, we're having a workshop in Mexico in September. We're also planning a workshop for the UK. We haven't got a date for that yet. That's going to be on surveying techniques, because people, most of the surveys done they use spraint, which is the droppings of the otter, and they come up with numbers from it, and you can't do that because the otter will do its spraint all over in various set places, and they say that if there's a lot of spraint, there's a lot of otters, which just doesn't work, because if you've got a domestic animal, a lot comes out the back end. We all know that. And they come up with figures, and it's not possible. I mean, it's like trying to say, well, there's so many people, we can work out how many people there are by the number of public toilets there are. You can't do it. It just doesn't work. And yet, when you look at all the surveys that people are doing, they say, well, we've got 10,000 in the UK now because of the spraint surveys. It's irrelevant. And some other group did one with sightings. Well, that again doesn't work, because in our village, you can be told, right, there's one at the pier, there's one near the shop, there's one at the other end of the village. It's the same one. So you've got to, nowadays they're doing more DNA work, but it's very, very slow to get that going. And it's expensive too. So we want to have this workshop, because in Wales, they found that the spraint signs seem to be going down. And it doesn't mean that the number of otters has gone down, but it's something you have to be aware of. And the media put out stuff like otters all over the UK. Well, they're not. It's like freshwater otters eat eels, a lot of eels. And in parts of England, the eel population has plummeted by over 90%.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't get your eels, what are you going to do? You've got to go further. Same as a human, your shop closes, so you go to another one. That closes, so you go to another one. You have to go further and further. So it's more likely the home ranges have got bigger than that there are actually more otters. You can't argue they're appearing in silly places, in the middle of cities and things. That's true. But numbers haven't necessarily gone up. And this is the problem. The media says it, and then it becomes gospel. That's it. That is the truth. Whereas we know it isn't.
And then part of your job is to kind of have like a counter messaging, where you tell through your social media and different channels, tell them, hey, that's actually not true. The otter population is not growing that fast, or it's actually plummeting. Do you see that as one of your roles when it comes to posting social media?
I think the thing we believe in is tell the truth. If you've got the data, then you can say, I believe that, and I can prove it with that. Mm-hmm. But people just come out with random statements. I mean, years ago, I don't know if you've ever come across, we have a thing called Winter Watch and Spring Watch on BBC. somebody who should have known better, and I won't mention his name to embarrass him, came out saying otters are all over the country now. You think, oh no, if you saying that,
Everyone
and people
believes.
go out to, yeah, because he does know otters. He's very good at filming them, photographing them, and all the rest of it. But he came out with that. And we think, oh, and then you have to combat it all the time.
Yeah.
And do you share, because I imagine you guys are the centralized, because you're an International Otter Fund, so I envision your organization as the central information center. Do you share your information with other otter groups or organizations? Is that something you would consider part of the role of your organization, is to spread the message to other smaller organizations in order for everyone to be on the same page, or do you just work independently?
No, we do believe a lot in collaboration. I mean, we have otter networks. After we've had these workshops, we set up a network, and then they get on with it, and we sort of back them up, and they'll say, well, we want to do this, and sort of help them in that way. But I think collaboration is really important. I do have to say that we do have a problem with IUCN. It's back to this American trapping business. They are the ones coming out saying that it's sustainable. And we have said to them time and time again, give us the data, give us the data. This has been going on since 2007. So it's not a year or two. And they just don't, just lots. And we used to be part of the IUCN Otter Specialist Group, but because they don't see anything wrong with it, they'll criticise people in Asia killing otters, which we obviously don't agree with. But as I said before, you can understand why. But when you're doing it because it's trapping and we've always done it and it's, all this sort of stuff, we couldn't be part of that group anymore. So we work with people in the group, individuals, but not the actual group. But we try to work as far as possible with as many groups as we can. I mean, Ben does a lot of that because he's the education person and he does World Otter Day and he's contacting people all over the place. And we have a webinar on World Otter Day that he arranges. And we try to get as many different people from all over the world talking about what they're doing and how they're doing it, this sort of thing. So it spreads the word because, okay, you might hear from someone in Chile, say, and you think, well, that's good, but it won't work quite that way. But I can twist that somehow to work the way we work. You know what I mean? So it's all about spreading how other people are doing things.
It's incredibly important to do that. Now that we're such a globalized with social media and everything, it's important to understand the other cultures and other people's perspective before you go out and try to force them to change or force them to see something's wrong when in reality you are not from that culture, kind of like the example you gave us before. So I think in communicating your cause and all the problems and solutions that can be given to help others, a great part of that when you're spreading the message is to understand where the other person's coming from so you can help them better. And I think that's very smart to do that when it comes to, for example, social media. If you're spreading awareness on a certain topic about the trade of otter fur as well, I think that's really important. And do you do that with most of your campaigns? Do you, before you put out any content, do you think like, okay, this country thinks this way, we don't want to paint them as a bad guy?
It's different in a sense in that if we're working with a particular country, say back to Chile, they will do their bit so that we're sort of trying to help them. Or Nepal, they do the awareness and they say, well, we think this will work. Well, okay, do it. I mean, to give you a strange example or a different example, somebody we know wrote some children's books for Sri Lanka. And one of them was about a princess, a young princess, little girl, and her younger sister had no hair. So the parents said, well, we'll have to kill an otter and put it on the head because that'll make the hair grow. That's what they believed. And the older sister wasn't happy about that and said, don't kill the otter. They didn't, and the hair grew. Right? Now, we would never have thought of doing something like that because it's not our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why you have to have local people doing the education. You know, we can give them tools, we can give them ideas, and then they can take them and adapt them. That's the idea.
Interesting. So a part of your website is also the Otter store, the
Mm-hmm.
e-commerce store. Is that a big part of the overall organization, or is it just a small part?
It contributes quite a bit to our funding.
Yeah.
And also people will buy things like an adoption and give it to somebody as a gift, which then means that they've learned about otters and so is the person they've given it to. You know, so it is an important part.
Yeah.
We just sort of have many different aspects, I suppose.
Yeah, it seems like you've scaled your organization quite a lot. So is there something you wish you could make bigger, part of your organization, some aspect of it that you wish, like if you had some extra fundraising, you would put it into this sector?
Probably education.
Mm.
I mean, there's only 5 of us who work here, and that's it. And although we do more or less have our own roles, we sort of, if one's off, the others have to cover. That's simple. So I think education is so crucial because it also bears down on rehab. You know, if you're somebody finds an otter in country where they would kill them, and then they've heard about, well, you don't. Well, take an example. The first workshop was in Cambodia, 2009, and a network was set up. Fisherman found an otter caught in his nets, and normally he would have just killed it. But he contacted the network, and they took it, and it went into a rescue centre. Now, that is education linked to other aspects, and it's all interlinked, isn't it?
Yeah. I think really when you look at your whole organization, I tend to agree with you that education and educating people in different cultures is probably the best thing you could be doing overall, because that's what makes people change, is that they understand, for example, that others are, that the population is declining and that they're used for these different things.
Mm-hmm.
Without knowing those things, people can never change.
No, they can't. Yeah. And you've got to do it without being sort of preachy. You know, you've got to have a conversation rather than, thou shalt not kill otters. You know, that you'll never get anywhere with that. It'll just put people's backs up and they'll just, well, I'm doing what I want anyway. You've got to involve people, I think. Yeah, it's difficult. You know, I suppose if we had more time, you'd do more, but there's a limit. As I said, there's only 5 of us. And if an otter comes in, an animal takes priority, so something else has to wait. And that's why when we, arrange talks and things, I mean, we also do talks by Zoom. That really came to the front with COVID, obviously. Yeah. But we still can continue to do that. And I mean, World Otter Day, we've been able to do talks in Iraq, Bangladesh, Chile. I can't remember everywhere. I mean, I did one to Sixth Form College this morning. And it means that, you're not spending money and time getting to wherever these places are. This one was just in England, but there's no way I could do a presentation to Iraq, by going. So, they're doing a good job in Iraq, actually. The otters there, a fisherman found an albino cub, and he was offered something like $50,000 for it as a unique pet, and he said no. You think, what a hero! I mean, it's brilliant. Yeah. So it's now in Baghdad Zoo. It's probably about 6-7 months now, and unfortunately, it can never be released because it will be killed either for the fur or taken as a pet. So it has to stay there, but they're using it to tell people about otters. So that's the way, you do it. We had somebody in Democratic Republic of Congo. She was brilliant as well. She was a missionary out there, and she was brought a little tiny cub, 5 days, 6 days old, blind, just totally helpless. And the hunter had killed the mother and then felt sorry for this little cub and said, "Can you do something with it?" I don't know why. I mean, if you kill something, you wonder why you've got that caring. But anyway, he did. And to cut a very long story short, they reared her and she became a real ambassador for Democratic Republic of Congo. All the local villagers came to see her. The village leaders, even people from the government, came out to Kikongo to see this strange but wonderful animal. And she became a real ambassador. And people say, "Well, you can't kill otters now." You know, if you've got something, and she did actually go back, she released, and they've had more since. But if you can sort of highlight these sort of success stories, and it was people who'd lived there. I know she was American, but she'd born and bred in the Congo. So they listened to her. And you can help by, they wanted stuff like things to improve the habitat, which would then ultimately help the otters. So if it helps them and helps the otters, then it's great, isn't it?
Incredible. I think, yeah, that's how you spread the message. And would you say, if you would recommend anything to other directors of organizations, I assume that one of them would be to spread education, or what tips would you give other directors of nonprofits?
I would focus on education, but I would always make sure you're 100% honest and base what you're saying on data. Like the Americans are saying there's loads of them. That's not on data. But, I believe you've got to be honest. It's like sometimes one of our cubs that we're looking after will die. I'm not going to pretend it hasn't. I'm not going to hide it. It happens. As soon as you're getting an animal in, it's compromised anyway. But some people sort of just, I'm trying to think of a polite word for it, blag it. That'll do. Mm. They'll say things and you think, that's not based on fact. That's not true. And they're not telling the truth. And yet you can't call them out because, well, you can't. Mm-hmm. But if you're a director of an organization, not just in conservation, in anything, I do believe you've got to be honest.
Transparent.
And transparent, that's the right word. With funds, with what you do, everything. Just be transparent. And then people can say, what have you done with this? Well, I can explain, this is what we've done with it. And that goes for funding, it goes for animals, it goes for whatever.
Amazing.
Yep. Well, yeah. I definitely learned a lot from your organization and from Otters as well. And thank you so much for your time, for chatting with us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I mean, you know where we are on email, so keep in touch.